Okay, we are continuing on a video. I just recorded 7 minutes of it, no audio. That annoys me. So I'm sorry, I'm going to waste 10 seconds of your time telling you about the 7 minutes that I just wasted. We left off basically talking and thinking about the idea that the English government and the kind of the role of limited government evolved between 1215 and the signing of the Magna Carta, and about in the late 1600s, where in England we are really kind of moving forward with and advancing the idea of limited government, right? It's not just a monarch that has the right to rule anymore. Limited government and representative democracy, and that is advancing over this time period in England. And what we want to remember that at that time, England was also settling America. So we have a situation where a lot of these rights and kind of this thinking is being expressed both in England, but then it's also being expressed in America. And so this is not a United States history class, and so we do not need to know every single piece of history on this. We need to know the important parts for understanding the American government, all right? And so what we need to understand, and the highlights that we need to understand, if you want to go in and dive into this time, it's a very interesting time. I certainly think that you could do that. But I am going to focus here on the highlights and the things you need to know to understand our government, all right? And so we have these ideas from the English Bill of Rights and from the Magna Carta, ideas about limited government, democracy, people voting, all right? And we see this popping up in our country and the physical space that will be the United States of America and the people that will be settling this area. One way that we see this is in the Mayflower Compact. Basically, the Mayflower was one of the early ships for settlers here to America. What we want to note about that is that before they even get off the boat, they sign a constitution-like thing. They sign a set of rules that everybody is going to agree to be governed by. It's like an advanced roommate agreement, if you've ever heard of that. When you go to college sometimes, if you room with somebody in a dorm or whatever, and you don't know who they are beforehand. I had Andy B was my college roommate, and I had never met him before. We were very different people, but they recommend you sign a roommate agreement and the things that you'll do and blah blah blah. Didn't really work in our situation. There was no Mayflower Compact, let's put it that way. But the idea is that they're all agreeing to this, and that it looks very similar to a constitution, right? It looks very similar to kind of the rule of law. It's not one warlord that's in charge of everyone setting the rules. Everyone agrees to be no one's above the law. Everyone agrees to abide by these laws. It's written beforehand. It applies equally to everybody. Okay, we're going to have a right to vote and things like that. And then in Connecticut, we have our first actual kind of constitution. And so we are seeing these kind of rights and ideas that are formulating in Britain being expressed in some of our early colonies, where in the early colonies where people are setting out constitutions, setting out rules, setting out ideas for democracy and voting versus potentially other ways of structuring it. So again, we were going to hit the highlights of what's going on in terms of the American Revolution. So what's happening is the 13 colonies are being settled. All right, the government is being organized there. We are having, yes, governments, but at the end of the day, it's still, all the colonies are still accountable to the English crown, accountable to England. And so what ends up happening is there is a war in the mid-1700s, all right, around 1755, I think 1754 to 1763. I looked it up before this video. Called the French and Indian War. And what you need to know is that the English were fighting the French for territory in America, and were defending the colonies from the French and their Native American allies. The English ended up winning this war, but as you should be able to imagine, wars at this time, and as it continues to be to this day, are extremely expensive. And again, in this time, you've got to take a soldier, all right, train that soldier, then you have to send the soldier, all right, across the ocean for 2 months, feed the soldier, supply the soldier, and it's not just soldiers, right? It's cavalry, it's firearms, it's clothing, all right? It's a salary. So you have to send them over across the sea, and then, right, some of them are going to be casualties, some of them are not going to make it, so, a certain percentage of your soldiers, you just kind of lose that investment, all right? That is an expensive thing to do. It's really expensive, right? And think about, like, wagons and cannons and all sorts of things, building forts and stuff. I mean, it's an expensive thing. And so the British won this war, but it was wildly, wildly expensive, all right? So what ends up happening is, predictably, what happens when something's expensive? Well, you got to raise taxes, right? Or cut expenditures. We need some room in the budget. So they needed to fund this war, and I know that you've probably learned, as have I, that the British were being ridiculous, and I'm not saying that they weren't, but at the end of the day, this war kind of was to defend the colonies, so it makes sense that they would have to pay for it, and like we pay taxes like this today all the time and don't get all that angry, but the colonists did not really like this. So we want to note kind of two things through this, and I think this chart does a good job of showing it, is that over this period of time, the British kept raising taxes on the colonists, and the colonists didn't like that. All right, we have, number one, we just see these taxes that keep going into place. The Sugar Act, we have taxes on sugar. All right, Stamp Act, basically stamping any legal document or paper that you had to affix a stamp to it, that it costs money for the stamps. All right, Townshend Acts, which were taxing glass, lead, necessities, right? Paint, paper, tea. Then we have the Tea Act, which I think we know that story. The Tea Act, which ends up taxing tea, which was very popular at the time. And then finally, the colonists get upset about the Tea Act. They go, and again, I hope at some point you have heard of this, the Boston Tea Party. The colonists get upset. They dress up as Native Americans. They go into Boston Harbor, and they throw a bunch of tea into the harbor. All right, the king is not pleased. The king is not pleased. So they shut down Boston. They're like, you guys are in big trouble. You're going into timeout. And then they stop town meetings in Boston. And then they allow for British soldiers to be housed in private homes, like mandatory. Like, guess what? Bill's moving in. Bill's moving in tomorrow. What? Yeah, that's the law. He's going to be sitting in your kitchen drinking coffee in the morning. You got to put him up. But we don't like Bill, and like we don't have extra bedrooms. Doesn't matter. You're gonna have to sleep on the couch. Bill's moving in. I think it's not. I would not be happy about that. The other thing on this chart I want you to notice is that there are restrictions on things such as civil liberties, right? Town meetings. All right, this in 1763, they say, look, you aren't allowed to go to the west of the Appalachian Mountains. You have to get a license from England to trade with Native Americans. The British officials are allowed to search people's homes, without, right, just to look for smuggled goods. So we see that taxes are going up. And we see that England is pulling back. England is pulling back on rights and freedoms in the